do, I wanted to bring on Chris Fuentes, the analyst here at Avory, and kind of go one by one over a couple minutes and just our quick takes on each conversation that we had. And so, Chris, there he is. So, Chris, welcome. Obviously, let's go one by one. I know, obviously, you did a lot to put this together, but also in general, we always analyze many of the same things independently, of course. But in general, let's go kind of starting from foot traffic with Placer AI. What was your initial take on what Ethan had to say about some of the trends within some of the categories?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I think so. One of the key trends that stuck out to me that Ethan was mentioning was sort of the idea of retailers optimizing their fleets, right? And so I think we've seen over the past 2 years, let's say, since COVID started, a lot of companies thinking twice about whether they need as many stores to reach customers, and then conversely, I think a lot of retailers thinking about putting in brick and mortar stores as a method of acquiring customers or increasing brand awareness. And so we've seen the balance between the kind of like large scale retailers scaling back. And I think we've also seen small scale direct to consumer brands, let's say, really using those brick and mortar locations strategically and kind of like a leaner, smaller footprint to help, I guess, acquire customers more efficiently.
Yeah, I think one of my takes was just the holiday season extension. I think it makes a lot of sense because a lot of people are looking at retail sales numbers and the skews of what it was to last year to 2019. And the reality is people are shopping differently. Ethan, I think, echoed that. They saw that in the data sets, and that people shopped earlier, and therefore October looked incredible, while maybe November and December or certain periods looked a little bit different. I know for one, Best Buy was offering obviously Black Friday deals like 2 months in advance, and they would lock in if you got a better price on Black Friday, they would match it. And they would automatically match it. So they knew that they were going to give you the best price. We knew supply constraints existed across the board in terms of all of retail. Therefore, the likelihood of cost reductions was going to be limited. That speaks to the margin profile a lot of these businesses will likely see in the future. I think the other thing is, again, health and wellness. Obviously, we talked about it with Sensor Tower, but I think health and wellness continues to be a category that's coming back strong and consolidating. Again, going back to Planet Fitness, saying that 15.2 million members, that's basically back to where they were as COVID was beginning. But they're coming in much leaner and much more efficient in terms of the footprint that they have. So pretty interesting conversation there with Placer. Next up was Duolingo. Speaking with the CFO there, your initial thoughts on Duolingo?
Yeah, so Duolingo is a company that we've done a lot of work on, but I think at a grander scale, just the space as a whole, we have our innovation block we call the future of education, and I think what that really means is we're going from the classroom taking place within the four physical walls in the physical world to now sort of an increasing abundance of options, whether that's massive open online courses like Coursera, Udemy, and some of these other platforms. Or if it's the Duolingos of the world targeting some very, very specific areas to start, I guess, like language learning. I guess specifically about Duolingo, what's very interesting there, right, is how they're sort of repurposing the platform to service other areas, including math, which is very exciting. And I think, again, they're not necessarily competing with the Rosetta Stones of the world. I think it's a very, very different game that they're playing. And I think of the long run, you are sort of seeing kind of new market creation. And I think honestly, the best part of that interview to me was the idea that they don't know, how big that market is, and they're sort of pursuing it. And a lot of it is this new market creation taking place. And I think that's very exciting for them because it could potentially mean have large implications down the road.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're a dominant brand, and Sensor Tower echoed that thought where their magnitude's more of like kind of the second, third, fourth competitors in the space as it relates to like language learning apps, right? And again, I think the concept of them stepping back away and making it very clear that they're not just simply a language learning, right? They're a learning kind of company app. But also within that, they have different characters and content that you could easily, if you have a child and you've seen things on TV or Disney, like characters, to create a character is really, really hard. And to have that ability and then bring on someone that literally led a lot of the children content and beyond that at PBS, I think says a lot about their ambition, but also maybe the realization from Linda to come over to realize that, hey, there is something here on that content creation side that is exciting. Going to the next one, golf plus VR. It's always interesting to talk to like developers and people creating inside of ecosystems. Your initial thoughts of that discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very exciting one. As you know, I also now have an Oculus, and I think it's an incredible device. And I think we're at the very, very early stages of that flywheel just starting to spin. And so what I mean by that, right? So Ryan was speaking about how they just saw multiples, like their app downloads multiplied, or the number of users they have multiplied, which is incredible. Brings in a whole bunch of new revenues you had mentioned, and then where can that capital be allocated? Well, there's a lot of investments into, expanding the product itself. But as you know, if you zoom out and look at the whole developer ecosystem, all that money is just being reinvested into improving the experience. And I think a lot of the friction has been removed compared to where it was maybe a few years ago, which is great. I think it shows in the numbers today. But I think there's still a lot of room for it to run clearly. And so as that flywheel continues to spin, I think it'll be really exciting to see sort of what takes shape, in the future.
Yeah, I guess for me, quickly, it was the what pinged my ears was his satisfaction with the Oculus ecosystem for one. Two, acknowledging that they're light years ahead in terms of the product that they've created. It speaks to the rationale potentially behind the name change. And also, when you think about the product that he has created, obviously it's changed its name a couple times, but previously it was still affiliated in some ways with Topgolf. So it already had this brand, but what changed from then and now, where he saw 5-6x explosion in the usage or downloads of his product? Partially probably a brand change and things like that, but it's more importantly is that you're starting to get consumption of the product. And that's ultimately how networks and ecosystems grow and develop. So I think, again, going back a year ago to now, there's evidence here that this ecosystem is growing pretty rapidly in downloads and also satisfaction. Next is Nutanix. Your general thoughts on Nutanix? It was good to get an analyst, historical analyst, right, for many years of obviously understands different nuances more than the average. So your take?
Yeah, so Nutanix, I think, is an interesting one, right? Because it's a little bit slightly different than the others. It kind of fits, I guess, both buckets. But I think what we've historically followed is this digitization of almost everything. And historically, I think a lot of people just thought that meant a big shift to the public cloud. And what has become more clear is that a lot of companies are now actually choosing to do multiple things, everything in between, which is essentially what the hybrid cloud ecosystem is. And Nutanix sat in a very interesting spot pre-transformation. And I think whenever we're investing capital or allocating capital, we're always thinking about companies disrupting themselves and willing to do that. And I think Nutanix has proven, clearly that it can do that and it will do that to survive. And not only survive, but it's clearly become one of the best solutions out there. And so by sort of disrupting themselves and moving independently from the hardware, I think that was very powerful. So at a very broad level, I think the story is different. I think it's very interesting. Zooming into the ecosystem as a whole, again, I think Richard spoke a lot about sort of the outlook of the next 5 years. They're one of the leading solutions now. A lot of companies really enjoy their product, which is hard to get, if you're a consumer, hard to get that feel for what companies think. But I think it's very promising, and at the end of the day, fits all the criteria that we like from an economic moat perspective. Sort of that stickiness of revenue. It seems like really infrastructure of the 21st century. Maybe not as we had imagined it a couple of years ago, but now it's becoming increasingly evident that it is very important.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is definitely this durable product that they've built, that where contract lengths are roughly like 3.5 years. So when a customer comes in, they're not only happy, but they're contractually sticking around. So you're happy and you're contractually sticking around. That's where when they refer to the renewal business, right? This was not a subscription model before. And if we think of how we subscribe to things in life or how we pay for things in life, a lot of the stuff we all do is subscriptions, and you kind of forget that you have these subscriptions in a sense. So think of something that's reoccurring, and after a year, it automatically renews. There was very little marketing spent on that renewal rate. And that's where Richard was talking about a massive decline in marketing spend for those renewals. So we love that aspect. And again, it's a transformation story, and transformation story is different from a structural growth story for us. It's really around this company disrupting itself several years back, and going through the transformation that's required to be sustainable into the future. And I think that's a really strong characteristic of any business. Is if you think of 30 years ago when Apple was just a computer, and then eventually it was something else, and then they continued to transform their business. Microsoft as well. Again, not putting Nutanix in the same state in terms of where they'll end up in the world 10 years from now, but I do believe that it's this recognition that in some cases you have to evolve, and for us, it's about getting there at that inflection point or just before the inflection point, where the analyst community or investor community isn't necessarily as aware of the story until it's obvious and clear. Once it's obvious and clear, we think, generally speaking, markets are pretty efficient to understand this is the best company or product in the world, and you don't get that kind of that opportunity set. So last one is Sensor Tower. So again, we're users of Sensor Tower, and the beauty of I think this event was putting together a structural growth story, a transformation story, a developer inside of an ecosystem that we invest in, and then also data from both the physical world and the digital world. And Sensor Tower, again, something that we use regularly, if daily, hourly, to understand what are the trends inside of some of the businesses that we are involved with. So your quick takes on Dennis and Sensor Tower.
Yeah, Sensor Tower, clearly very interesting because it runs beneath all of the companies that we've spoken about today, all of the themes that we follow very closely. And I think, Dennis did a great job covering a lot of areas. And I think for me, I really enjoyed getting to hear the companies earlier and then tying what Dennis had to say with what they had to say. And so you could see clearly Duolingo doing very well domestically, but also internationally. A lot of, I guess, consumers flocking to the Duolingos of the world versus the Rosetta Stones. And you also mentioned Babbel in there, which I thought was interesting. So, from a company specific standpoint, really enjoyed that. Social is another area I think we speak a lot about. We have, clearly followed the space for a very long time. I mean, I guess almost since its infancy. And I think that's interesting because he talked about the meteoric rise of TikTok and sort of the balance in share, right? So whether or not somebody spends a lot of time in TikTok versus Instagram, and how users of both generally spend less time on Instagram. At the end of the day, I think that is an interesting point to make. I think a lot of people have the mentality of a zero-sum game where people are going to go to TikTok, and because TikTok is growing rapidly, Facebook is somehow going to be impacted negatively. And I think that's a huge company that really just goes to show how powerful their network effects are at the end of the day. And that the game isn't really zero sum at all. And then also, I guess, lastly, was just around fitness. Clearly we have a lot of interest in Planet Fitness, but also companies like Peloton, which we follow closely. And you mentioned you own one, and I think that's interesting as well. But sort of what's going on with the consumers there. And then also the whole transition in how consumers use apps now as a medium to go into gyms on a daily basis, et cetera. I've had to do that several times as well. And so I think it does open up a new interface, a new communication channel with the companies and the consumers, valuable digital real estate that didn't exist before.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good take overall, and I won't even add to it. My kind of want to end there. I guess generally speaking, thanks for everyone that tuned in. This will be recorded and sent out as well. So anyone that is here now, obviously you'll know that, and anyone else, I guess we'll find that out after the fact. Now, if you wanted to reach out to us at all in any way, you could email me, Sean at avoryco.com, team at avoryco.com if you wanted just a generic email, or Chris at avoryco.com. In general, what I wanted to leave you with is we'll have more of these. This is Avory Idea Day 2022. We may bring on and do the semi-annual one, but we will make this an annual, longer event with even more companies as we move into the future. So I appreciate everyone joining or listening in after the fact. I hope everyone stays safe out there. And that is really it. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.